I would like to invite former Minister of State and Chairman of Pakistan Board of Investment, Mr. Haroon Sharif, to come forward and share his views regarding the conference today.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Very good morning and assalamu alaikum. Thank you very much for inviting me. Thanks to Sanober Institute, Azaz Chaudhry Saab, Hasham Saab, Ambassador Nagmana, my dear friend Mr. Khurram Dastagir is here, Mushahid Saab, and Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. So I think you have heard the big picture and the corridors from Senator Mushahid Hussain. I'm a public policy person and who has worked for over 35 years now in various countries looking at how sectors develop, how you build the sustainable foundation of any sector. Potential alone does not sell. We need to keep, our head in the clouds, but our feet on the ground. I think that is how I will also be, unfortunately, giving some of the reality checks and challenges so that one can have an applied approach that how we move from where we are. The baseline is low, but there are practical things happening around us through which we can open up this sector which can have a sustainable contribution not to Pakistan's GDP, but also, as Ambassador Chaudhry mentioned, about our image, about opening up, about cultural exchanges, about knowledge exchanges. Once a country does not open up, your understanding what's happening around us also, gets narrow. So a few facts on tourism. As an economist, I'm inclined to put numbers, but I think they're all available on websites. But I would like to mention some of the headline things about the sector globally. Pandemic came, so the sector is very vulnerable to external and internal shocks. Because one shock of pandemic, one shock of inflation, one shock of terrorism can actually put it down. But the sector has an amazing resilience to recover, tourism sector. So post-pandemic, the sector has actually recovered very well to the old numbers and the old level. This is one sector when the global GDP for the past 7-8 years is under stress, This is one sector which has actually grown more than global GDP. Now, this is an important thing, that even in the time of, some kind of recession, this sector can continue to perform. So this sector has a potential. Also in terms of, numbers, domestic tourism constitutes about 75% at a median rate in most economies. So our obsession or our, romance with having lots of international tourists is good, but see where the potential is. In a country like Pakistan, where 70% of people are under the age of 30. In Pakistan, the people who travel, the age bracket is 25 to 45. 90% of tourists actually fall under that age bracket. So I'm putting a context that, how countries do. Then there is a leisure tourism and a business tourism division. So the leisure tourism basically is about 73% globally, and the business tourism is about 27% globally. So I'm just trying to see that, the world we live in, that is what tourism sector is. Now coming to Pakistan. Pakistan's economy, as all of us know, has struggled, still struggling to revive. And there are 4 fault lines which I mention at most of the places. Any policy, since we spoke of tourism policy, any policy should look at some filters in Pakistan. The topmost filter is that can this sector create economic and job opportunities for the young people. About 3 million young boys and girls are coming in the labor market every year. I think it has the potential, so it ticks that box. Can this sector boost Pakistan's exports? or foreign exchange earning? Yes, but not in the near future. Let's be very clear, because the numbers don't really support it, that it can have a transformative impact. It can take a transition if a solid foundation is built, and then, it can go to that level. So in terms of exports, I was quite surprised that more than 50% of, tourists in Pakistan use online systems. So which is for bookings, for travel and other things, which is very encouraging. So I think a digital adaptation is something in tourism which can also be a mean to facilitate tourists, more. Now with this reality, Senator Mushahid gave 3 corridors, but I would like to say if Pakistan needs to build a policy, a few words, that how we make policies, and how should we make policies, and how other countries have done it successfully. I'm glad my friend from Sri Lanka is here. I have visited Sri Lanka Tourist Board several times, in Malaysia, and I have seen, in other countries. First of all, policy is no cheap. Policy costs money. It costs money to be spent on evidence first. It's not a piece of paper which we write. And in Pakistan, in a federated structure, and thank you, Haroon Saab, for reminding, tourism is a devolved subject to provinces. So we got to keep in mind the first thing, that it is not the federal government which actually is the custodian of tourism sector under our constitution. Now, how do we do the endless coordination, which my friend Khurram Dastagir and I speak? That is, I think, the first challenge for Pakistan. How do you build ownership of a policy which is to be implemented by provinces? Now, that is, I think, the first thing I would like to highlight here. And that's where I think the Mushahid Saab's idea of having a central tourism authority, first of all, I'm allergic to the word authority. It just gives a controlled kind of, image. When I was in the government, the Prime Minister Imran Khan wanted to open up the housing sector. The immediate suggestion came, set up a Naya Pakistan Housing Authority. So the moment you put an authority and state capture, I don't think any sector will grow. How much more evidence we need that a state which cannot pay the pension bills cannot invest in the tourism infrastructure, cannot manage the assets of tourism. So that is my second part. First is the coordination with provinces. Second part is very important, that it must, state needs to delegate it to private sector. Even the institutions of tourism in most countries are actually deregulated. It is not the state that runs it, and state only needs to create incentives. My third thing is that with all these plans, I would put in order of sequencing the policy. Sequencing means that you start with improving your existing facilities and facilitation for domestic tourism, because I know that in summers, basically all the northern areas, they get choked off. People don't get, fuel, they don't get food, they don't get rooms. So first and the foremost is that we focus on basically raising the level, which is about 5% of GDP at the moment. I think we can very easily go to another 2 percentage points if we facilitate and expand. But if you need to expand in a country where investment to GDP ratio is falling. When I was in the World Bank, Punjab government asked for a loan for heritage tourism. I said, I can do a technical sport program, but please don't borrow. Please leverage the private capital, which should sustain and do this tourism, But eventually World Bank ended up giving some $50 million loan, and, they did some infrastructure and bathrooms and roads and stuff. But unless and until there is an enabling framework. Now, Third constraint in that is, and I think this is not, I'm not negatively saying, I think this is a challenge which we have to take on. The sector is great, the potential is great, as Mushahid Saab has said, everybody knows, but can we leverage the potential with the way we are operating currently, or do we need to think differently? That's the message which I am basically putting on table. So my third thing is that, where would the money come from? You need investment. If you want to uplift the sector, the returns will come if you put public investment, which attracts private capital, and then, the revenues start generated. Now, this country at the moment in the fiscal space, I don't see state has or state should invest. I give you some of the examples as our sub in that. The money is available in the region. That money will not come in the state system. How many times we need to remind ourselves? This money will go if we change the governance structure of intervention. And by governance structure where they feel their money is safe, they feel their money is in the competent hands, they feel the people who are running it are not politically influenced, where they feel that, there is above average potential when we compare with the rest of the world. So I give you one proposition. One of the best expertise around neighborhood for tourism is Turkey. That's a country which thrives on tourism. But unfortunately, Turkey doesn't have money. They have their own economic, problems. If we bring in joint ventures with people who know business, I think the money can very easily come from places like China and Qatar. Qatar particularly would be much more comfortable if there is a governance structure. And I give you a concrete example because when I left the government, so Prime Minister called me and he said, no, I would still like you to do some things. I said, sir, can you give me 2 museums? Texila and Lahore. He said, what do you mean by give you? I said, let me change the governance structure. Money will flow. This can actually give you 50 times more revenue and people if the governance structure changes, if the quality changes. So he immediately, in a government manner, made a task force and asked me to do it. For 1 year, I brought in Sheikha Al-Maissa, the sister of Amir of Qatar, into that. I brought in UNESCO. I brought in the chief executive officer of Victoria and Albert Museum in London. And I thought we can fast track. But now the hurdle number 4, which I mentioned, the provincial government bureaucrats did not let us change the governance structure. So that is your challenge, that despite Prime Minister's orders and the task force and best of the best, now that is where the mentality of not letting go the assets, not letting go, you mentioned yesterday the resistance to modernity. It is the resistance to opening up. I think that is where Pakistan is stuck. So when you make the policy, I think these are the things to be looked into. I would put after the domestic tourism, nobody has mentioned, we have a captive market of Pakistani diaspora that visits here. Their new generation basically knows nothing about this country. They get bored by socializing when they are here. They have no places to go. They have the money. They earn in dollars and pounds. I think you need to target, because then they have to come every year. Now that's a visitor you don't need to attract by sights. It's by compulsion they come to their home country. But if we open up a specific incentive structure for diaspora, I think that is where they have no places to go. And I would again say, please start with these 2 museums. Both are in government of Punjab. Change the structure. I guarantee today I will bring money for that and expertise. But then you need to sustain that policy. You can't just go a transaction. If You want a resort? Bring in a private sector Pakistani company and a Qatari company, a Turkish company. Qatar will put in money. You know, China has developed fascinating museum. So second is diaspora. The third area is my favorite topic, that now this region is being connected. But regional connectivity, we have spoken again and again, alone is not going to revive any of the sector unless it opens up to private capital, unless it has trade and, you know, travel, logistics investments, unless borders are seen differently. This is the most important thing. Now, I just put some numbers on table. The population of Western China, which is now connected with us, is 380 million people. 380 million people. The population of 5 Central Asian countries, Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan and Tajiks and Kyrgyz and Turkmens, is 82.3 million people. Mostly young people. The median age is 26 years. The average income is slightly higher than Pakistan. And they basically are landlocked. So if you open up, my third would be start thinking with China, why can't tourism be one of the corridors in Pakistan, China, and BRI as a priority sector? You know, so that would be my, you know, third priority. And my fourth priority would be, of course, which Senator Mushahid mentioned, religious tourism. When I was in the World Bank, he mentioned 30,000 Sikhs coming for Kartarpur and, you know, Hassan Abdal places. Only in Kartarpur, you know, when Pakistan had closed the border and Pakistan used to issue 10,000 visas for pilgrims a year at that time. Now it's 30, I'm pleased. The Sikhs in India, they have set up a replica of Kartarpur Sahib across the river. Now that replica attracts 12,000 visitors a day. So please compare a yearly inflow versus a daily visitors. 10,000 people go there, 12,000 with binoculars. They see the original ones and they pray and go back. So the question here is, I told Mr. Shahbaz Sharif, he was at that time Chief Minister, I said, why can't you create a Vatican City here? A walled city. Open it up to these people. They will be very happy to pay you $100, you know, entry fee and go back the same day. Wouldn't even stay, you know. So we need to think out of the box to capture these markets, because these markets, the four markets, domestic tourism, particularly youth-oriented tourism, investment in transport and hoteling can only come from private sector. State has struggled to lease out land. Private land is so expensive that nobody will build a hotel, because the day one you buy expensive land, it becomes not competitive. If we can give 100 years lease, people would come forward, because I know 4 brands of international hoteling who are willing to take a position in Pakistan. But the barriers, one of the major barrier is land. Second is unavailability of domestic project financing. There's no rupee financing available. By the way, our state borrows 72% from the banking system. So we got to see our macro constraints. Interestingly, despite the macroeconomic imbalances, some of the things have gone positive for the tourism sector. A cheaper rupee actually is good for the tourist who earns in foreign currency, because Pakistan becomes, you know, more relevant destination. But higher inflation has cut down the consumption power of lower middle class and middle class. For that, we need to open up a regulatory structure for bed and breakfast in houses and affordable logistics. You can't continue building hotels. But that needs a very strong regulatory and digital structure to, manage that. So these are some examples I'm quoting. I have the numbers that it can go up to by 2033, according to the World Bank, 8% of our GDP. So 3 percentage points. That means about 30 billion, roughly, dollars terms in Pakistan. But there are 4 stages, and I'll close there. Invest in legitimate, genuine, independent research before you even start the policy. When you make the policy, please engage with provinces and private sector. Without their ownership, nothing will work. The policy should be that government deregulates, does not make another authority. I hope Mushahid Saab was sitting here, because we should change the 42 new authorities we created in the past 5 years, by the way. Please get out of this business of control. State has failed to run businesses, and it's not their business to run businesses. State needs to open up space for people who run businesses. Once you do, but sequence the policy, seek help from our friends sitting here, knowledge is available. Put the policy in a sequential form. Please, as I said in the start, I'll close on this at the end. Dreaming is good, but demonstrating a transaction has much higher multiplier impact than just selling a dream. And selling a misplaced dream has backfired time and again. So it's a sector. If we need to make it priority as ASAB, I think the first thing is that you need to create some champions who are committed to it in state, in private sector, within the region. And those champions should take it forward, but make a policy group which inspires confidence of private investors and markets. If it is again a bureaucratic policy, that would remain a piece of paper. I guarantee you, I've done it for 35 years. I also guarantee you in World Bank, I had a lot more money for research and policy than state has. And now I regret that the money we spent in millions of dollars, those reports cannot even be found. So let's be real. So my message is, I'm delighted to be here. It's a very important, timely subject, but with a reality check, let's move on and take it to the next level where the world start believing that this country has a foundation which can be scaled up. Thank you very much.